Now, this is a very high quality box coming from Kotobukiya. I actually wasn't expecting it because the box of Mona Megistus by Wonderful Works, the box was borderline awful on that one. This is a lot better, a lot more solid. Very similar to the type of box Apex used for Keqing. Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven, today with a figure unboxing plus review, a 2-in-1 video because this is a fairly simple figure. There is no need for two separate videos, unboxing plus review later on. One video will do Kotobukiya's Barbara Pegg from Genshin Impact. Yeah, unlike Ningguang or recently Good Smile's Saber Mordred, those will require two separate videos. A lot of things to talk about. So with Genshin stuff, I usually I pre-order them off Genshin official store over in China. Yeah, like in Taobao or in Tmall, those are in Chinese language, you know, those websites you need to be able to converse in Chinese. Same case for Barbara, I actually pre-ordered her via a Chinese website, but this time around, things did not go as smoothly as I expected. Well, not exactly unexpected, but as we all know, there has been multiple lockdowns over in China in several states, districts, cities because of their zero COVID policy. So a lot of shipments, figures included, are endlessly being delayed and I was relatively fed up. So I cancelled my pre-order over there and picked her up off Amazon as soon as she is available for a, well, reasonable price. I don't want to pay an overinflated price for her. And then, yeah, because I cancelled my pre-order over in the Chinese website, it also meant I forfeited a $20 deposit which I placed last year. But seriously, I don't care anymore because as a content creator, as a YouTuber, photographer and so on, I want to get my stuff fast. So this is an exception where I picked her up off Amazon Japan. So without further ado, let's open up this parcel and check out the figure. And that concludes the unboxing part for this figure, though I have some things to discuss about the assembly process later on. Once again, we are looking at Kotobukiya's 1/7 scale Barbara Pegg from Genshin Impact. She was released just last week. Yeah, 16th of November 2022. And for a price of 17,800 yen. Before taxes, all shipping cost, including the Japanese tax, is more like almost 19,000 yen. Yeah. So this figure stands at 27 centimeters tall, including the base, up to this point on her right hand. Typical size for a 1/7 scale figure, and her size will match every other Genshin figures made by Apex. Regarding the sculpt of this figure, well, Kotobukiya is one such company where I never question their sculpting because they always get it right. I can't even remember the last time I've questioned Kotobukiya getting the face of a figure they make wrong compared to, for example, the official artwork or even the prototypes, the official product photos. So what we saw in the product photos for this figure of Barbara Pegg, you are getting exactly as advertised, which is all great news. As you can see, her dress looks fantastic, and the best part has to be that grimoire she is carrying, which is very detailed. Her backside looks excellent as well, but unfortunately she isn't wearing any pantsu over here. As for the painting of this figure, well, let's discuss Kotobukiya first as a figure company in general. So Kotobukiya, when it comes to quality control on the painting, they tend to be quite okay. They rarely make much mistakes, if any at all, but at the same time, their paint job tend to be on the flat side. You don't see much shading or weathering on their figures. And the reason for that is because of cost cutting. I mean, when you look at the pricing of Kotobukiya figures, you compare it to rivals or other companies like Good Smile, Max Factory, Alter, and so on, well, their figures tend to be slightly cheaper, marginally cheaper, maybe 10 to 20%. They try to offer value to figure collectors. So it is understandable where they will cut some corners in the paint work. However, the lack of shading, which I would argue is very suitable for this figure of Barbara Pegg over here. It is something I can accept, I can overlook because, well, you need to look at the theme of this figure. This is a very bright and cheerful looking figure, right? Most anime that comes with a very colorful theme, very bright and cheerful. If you pay attention to their key animation, there isn't much shadows and the contrast of the overall scene is a lot lower, which is like the exact opposite of Ufotable's works with Kimetsu no Yaiba as well as the Fate series. Very dark, very high contrast, so you see a lot of shadows in their colors in the main character and the main subject. In those scenarios, you want those contrast shadows to be translated onto a figure. You want shading in Fate series figures. So for the case with this Barbara figure, the overall theme we are looking at over here, yeah, very bright and very cheerful, so I think that it is appropriate for this figure to lack weathering. There shouldn't be too much shading. With that in mind, this figure of Barbara is exactly that bright and cheerful theme I was talking about, so the lack of weathering and shading I think is appropriate for a figure like this. I'm not going to complain about Kotobukiya not shading the figure for this one specific figure of Barbara over here. However, my opinions will differ for other figures, of course. So, speaking of painting, other than the lack of weathering, the paint work is very precise on this figure, very accurate. I can't find any bleeding, blemishes, scratches, or anything that resembles a poor quality control. So once again, this is great work coming from Kotobukiya. There really isn't much problems on this figure, except, yeah, there is one gold color spot over here on her left fist. Yeah, a very small spot over there, which I need a macro lens to show you guys. Yeah, this is a paint staining coming from the gold color parts on her sleeves, I suppose. If you want to remove it, you can try using Mr. Hobby's leveling thinner on the cotton bud. It is possible to remove it. Other than that, you might spot one or two dust spots on this figure where during the painting process of a figure in a factory, some dust particles will land on the figure and then they will spray paint over it because they did not notice it. This is very common nowadays regardless of figure brands. And I have seen this in about every 8 to 9 figures out of 10 I've reviewed so far. So I guess that, well, this is the result of mass production where they need to rush out a large quantity of figures in a short amount of time. This is getting harder and harder to avoid, I suppose. And one last issue I found with this figure is near her collar over here. Yeah, somewhere this region. If you look carefully, at least on my copy of this figure, you can see something very shiny over there. That is actually glue which has leaked out from that part because they applied a bit too much of it when gluing two separate parts together. It is kind of a shame, but at the same time, it is very minimal, but I always notice such things because I'm very critical of figures in general. The next thing I would like to discuss with you guys has to do with the assembly of this figure, which I think you should not follow Kotobukiya's instruction sheet in terms of the steps, right? Specifically, this part over here, this musical effect part on both sides of the figure. So in the instruction sheet, Kotobukiya recommends you to put these two parts together first before pushing it into the figure underneath her skirt. Which I would say do not do that because it is quite difficult to insert this part into her dress over here. Very difficult because your angle has to be very precise. Not that it is very tight, but you need to be at a very precise angle. And if you get impatient because you couldn't get it in, well, you risk breaking this part over here. This is a very thin plastic pack. This should be metal to be honest, but Kotobukiya made it plastic because they had to cut cost, as always. So I would recommend you to insert this small part into the figure first. Yes. So I'm going to take this apart. Ideally, you need to insert this small part into the figure's dress first. And once you have already done, like this example on the left side over here, then only you insert this musical effect part on the side. Yeah, this will reduce the risk of breaking something in my opinion. And lastly, the base of this figure. Thank you so much, Kotobukiya, for not gluing this figure permanently to the base, because you guys have a very long track record of doing this over and over again where the figure is permanently stuck to the base. I can't take it apart. Not really the case with this figure, they are separate. But at the same time, yeah, there is no metal foot peg over here. You get very thick plastic acrylic foot pegs, which are supposed to be quite durable because of the sheer thickness of this plastic pack. But the bad news is that the assembly is very tight. It took me a lot of effort to push the figure into the base, and I only went 2/3. I did not push the figure fully inside because I'm afraid I might not be able to take apart the figure again. I'm putting her back in the box before transporting her home. This is just my studio where I film figures and do figure photography. This is not where I keep most of my figures. For the very same reason, I did not push this pack over here for the effect parts fully into the figure. I also went in about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way only, yeah, because of how fragile the part is. And oh, of course, this base looks amazing. I always appreciate a diorama base or something unique over a simple round plastic disc, which most other figure companies are doing. So this is very nice to see. So at the end of this review, is this figure of Barbara Pegg worth purchasing? I mean, Barbara Pegg is possibly one of the least popular characters in the game. So you might think twice before even buying one, especially if your budget is limited. For the sake of comparison, if you look at Keqing over in Taobao, Genshin official store, she sold like 13,000 or 15,000 units since release. Barbara, in comparison, was just a little bit more than 1,000 units. Yeah, the statistics are actually there. Yes, that is a huge difference in sales numbers because those other characters, including Keqing, they are way more popular than Barbara over here. So for those of you who have a limited budget, you might think twice or thrice before buying a character which possibly isn't your favorite. But I would say this figure of Barbara by Kotobukiya is a good purchase because this is a very competent figure. Nothing much wrong about it other than the care you need to take when you're assembling her. However, yeah, if you were to start saving up today, you decide to buy this figure of Barbara after watching my review, it is not yet too late because Kotobukiya figures, they are not known to become rare very quickly. Their production quantity is very high. Yes. So will you buy this figure of Barbara, or you already did? Please let me know down in the comments below, and what do you think about this figure of Barbara over here. Thank you very much for watching to this video, and please subscribe to this channel if you liked this review today. I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching once again, and goodbye.